Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to unpack, uh, that feeling of being a giver in a world that seems to reward takers.
Right.
You shared the book Outsmarting the Takers,
Hmm.
a guide for givers in a rigged world. And, you want that sweet spot of learning quickly but deeply.
Yeah.
No info overload here. We'll make sure you get those actionable insights and those aha moments you love.
Absolutely. The book really doesn't shy away from that feeling you might have that
Yeah.
the system is rigged.
Right.
It goes right into how takers, those who exploit the rules for personal gain, manipulate the systems we think of as fair.
It does make you question everything. Like I always
Yeah.
thought of things like the legal system
Hmm.
or even the economy as inherently fair.
Right.
But the book argues that they're not.
It uses the example of how the tax code can be manipulated.
Okay.
Like, did you know that in some countries, corporations can legally avoid paying taxes by shifting profits to offshore accounts? That's a pretty clear example of how the system can be rigged to benefit those who already have power and wealth.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder, how do we even begin to level the playing field?
Yeah.
The book talks about this divide and conquer strategy, right?
Yes, and it's something we see all the time, especially in today's political climate.
Yeah.
Takers pit people against each other based on things like race, religion, or political beliefs
Right.
to prevent them from uniting and challenging the status quo.
It's like they're creating this distraction so we don't notice the real issues.
Yeah.
Does the book offer any advice on how to see through those distractions? How can we become more aware of these tactics so we don't fall for them?
The book really emphasizes critical thinking and media literacy.
Okay.
It encourages us to question the information we're consuming and be aware of who's benefiting from the narrative being presented.
So it's not about becoming cynical or distrusting everything, but about being more discerning and informed.
Mhm.
But even with critical thinking, it can feel like we're constantly swimming upstream against a current that favors the takers.
Mhm.
Is there any hope for us givers?
The book doesn't paint a doom and gloom picture. Instead, it shifts the focus to the inherent strengths of givers.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right.
Tell me more.
So one of the biggest strengths is our ability to collaborate.
Okay.
The book highlights the success of unions and community co-ops
Yeah.
as examples of collective action leading to positive change.
That makes me think about the recent wave of worker-owned businesses popping up. Could this be a sign that things are starting to shift?
It's definitely a positive trend, and the book argues that givers are often at the forefront of these innovative models because they're more willing to share power and resources, which can lead to more sustainable and equitable outcomes.
But it's not always easy to collaborate, is it?
Right.
I mean, sometimes it feels like people are just out for themselves. How do we build trust and foster genuine collaboration in a world that often feels so competitive?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And the book acknowledges that building trust takes time and effort, but it also points out that givers, by their very nature, are more inclined to build authentic relationships based on mutual respect and shared values.
So it's not about being naive or letting people walk all over us. It's about approaching collaboration with a sense of discernment and intentionality.
Yeah.
But are there specific steps we can take to cultivate that trust and create those meaningful connections?
Yeah, the book dives into practical tips for building strong networks and relationships.
Okay.
One key point is being a good listener, really understanding the needs and motivations of the people you're working with.
Okay, so active listening is key. Are there other strategies that can help us build those collaborative relationships?
Another strategy is finding common ground, even with people who might seem very different from us.
Okay.
The book emphasizes the importance of seeking out those shared values and goals that can unite us, even across ideological divides.
That makes a lot of sense. Finding that common thread, that can bridge the gap between people and foster a sense of understanding and respect.
Right. And once those connections are established, it's important to be reliable, to show up for people, and to be consistent in our actions.
So it's about walking the walk,
Yeah.
not just talking the talk. It's about showing people that we're trustworthy
Yeah,
and that we're committed to building something together.
exactly. And that consistency builds credibility and helps
Yeah.
create a foundation for lasting collaborations.
But what about those situations where we're dealing with people who are clearly operating from a taker mindset?
Right.
How do we navigate those relationships without getting taken advantage of?
The book offers some really interesting insights on this.
Okay.
It encourages us to understand the Takers playbook, to recognize the tactics they use, and to develop strategies for counteracting them.
So it's like learning their game so we can play it more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there a risk of becoming what we're fighting against? I mean, if we start using the same tactics as the takers, aren't we just perpetuating the problem?
That's a really important point. And the book is very clear that the goal is not to become takers ourselves, but to use our understanding of their tactics to protect ourselves and create a more level playing field.
So it's about using our knowledge strategically and ethically,
Yeah.
and always with the intention of creating a more just and equitable outcome.
Exactly. It's about adapting those tools for good. For example, instead of using legal loopholes to avoid paying taxes,
Right.
we can use our knowledge of the legal system to advocate for policies that close those loopholes and ensure that everyone pays their fair share.
That's a great example. So it's about using our understanding of the system to work within it, but also to challenge it and push for reforms that benefit everyone.
Precisely. And the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to do that effectively.
Okay.
Whether it's through political activism, community organizing, or even just having those difficult conversations with people who might not share our perspective.
Yeah. So it's about being strategic, informed, and courageous in our approach.
Yeah.
But it's also about staying true to our values as givers and not letting those values get lost in the process.
Absolutely. And that's where the concept of resilience comes in.
Okay.
The book argues that givers, because they've often faced and overcome adversity, have a unique capacity for resilience.
It's like we've developed these inner resources
Yeah.
that allow us to bounce back from setbacks, to stay motivated in the face of challenges, and to keep pushing for change even when it feels like an uphill battle. I love that idea.
And the book reminds us that resilience isn't something we're born with. It's something we cultivate through experience, through learning, and through connecting with others who share our vision.
That's encouraging because it means that even if we don't feel particularly resilient right now, we can develop that resilience over time. Are there any specific strategies or practices that the book recommends for building resilience?
One of the most important is self-care. The book emphasizes that we can't pour from an empty cup, and that taking care of our physical, emotional, and mental well-being is essential for sustaining our efforts.
That resonates with me. Sometimes it feels like self-care is seen as indulgent or selfish, but in reality, it's an act of radical self-preservation.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we need to take care of ourselves in order to show up fully for the work that we're doing.
Exactly. And self-care can look different for everyone.
Yeah.
It might involve spending time in nature, practicing mindfulness, pursuing creative outlets, or simply taking some time to rest and recharge.
And it's also about setting boundaries, right?
Yes.
Learning to say no to commitments that drain our energy
Mm-hmm.
or don't align with our values, and protecting our time and space so that we can show up as our best selves.
Absolutely. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect, and it's essential for preventing burnout and maintaining our well-being.
So resilience is about self-care, but it's also about connection, right? The book talks about the importance of building strong networks and finding support within our communities.
Yes, because we're not meant to do this alone. Having people we can rely on,
Yeah.
people who understand our struggles and celebrate our successes, is crucial for staying motivated and resilient in the face of adversity.
It's about building a support system that can hold us up
Yeah.
when we're feeling discouraged or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it's about sharing our burdens and celebrating our victories together.
Exactly. And the book offers some great advice on how to build those supportive networks, both online and offline.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the importance of finding people who share our values and who are working towards similar goals.
That makes a lot of sense. Surrounding ourselves with like-minded people can create a sense of belonging and shared purpose, which can be incredibly empowering and motivating.
And those connections can also provide us with practical support, whether it's sharing resources, offering advice, or simply lending a listening ear when we need to vent our frustrations.
Okay, so we've talked about collaboration, resilience, and the importance of connection. But let's be honest. Even with all of that, the world can still feel pretty rigged in favor of the takers. How do we start to level the playing field? The book talks about learning the game, right?
Yes, and it encourages us to get comfortable with the idea of challenging the status quo.
That can feel intimidating, though.
Yeah.
I mean, who are we to challenge the way things have always been done?
The book argues that we all have a right, even a responsibility, to challenge systems that are unjust or unsustainable.
So it's about reclaiming our power, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that we're not powerless bystanders,
Yeah.
but active participants in shaping the world around us.
Exactly. And the book provides some really practical advice on how to do that effectively, whether it's through political activism, community organizing, or even just having those difficult conversations with people who might not share our perspective.
So it's about being strategic, informed, and courageous in our approach. But it's also about staying true to our values as givers and not letting those values get lost in the process.
Absolutely. And that's where the book's insights on understanding the Taker's Playbook become really valuable.
Can you give us a few examples of those tactics and how we can counteract them?
One common tactic is exploiting loopholes in the legal system.
Okay.
Takers will often use their resources to hire expensive lawyers and lobbyists
Yeah.
to create laws and regulations that benefit them at the expense of others. To counteract this, the book encourages us to educate ourselves about the legal system, to support organizations that advocate for legal reforms, and to hold our elected officials accountable for creating a more just and equitable legal framework.
So it's about becoming more informed citizens
Mm-hmm.
and using our knowledge to push for change.
Exactly. Another common tactic is controlling the flow of information.
Okay.
They often have a significant influence over media outlets
Right.
and can shape public opinion by controlling the narrative.
That's a scary thought. I mean, if they control the information, they control the story.
Yeah,
And that can have a huge impact on how people perceive the world.
absolutely. And that's why the book emphasizes the importance of media literacy, critical thinking,
Mm.
and seeking out diverse perspectives. It encourages us to support independent media outlets, to be aware of the biases inherent in different media sources, and to be critical consumers of information.
So it's about being more discerning about where we get our information
Yeah,
and learning to identify misinformation and propaganda.
precisely. And it's also about creating our own narratives
Okay.
and sharing our own stories. Because when we share our experiences and perspectives, we challenge the dominant narrative and create space for new possibilities.
That's a really powerful idea. It's about reclaiming our voices
Yeah,
and using them to speak truth to power.
exactly. And the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to do that effectively,
Okay.
whether it's through writing, speaking, art, or any other form of creative expression.
So it's about finding our own unique ways to communicate our message and to connect with others who share our vision.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that our voices matter, that our stories have the power to inspire change, and that even small acts of creative expression can contribute to shifting the narrative and creating a more just and equitable world.
That's a really empowering thought. But it can also feel overwhelming, right?
Right.
I mean, where do we even begin?
The book encourages us to start small, to focus on the areas where we feel most passionate and where we can make the biggest impact. It reminds us that even small actions can have a ripple effect, and that collective action can lead to significant change.
So it's about finding our own unique contribution, right?
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we don't have to do everything ourselves. We can collaborate with others, build on each other's strengths, and create a movement that's bigger than any one individual.
That's a really inspiring message. It's about recognizing our collective power and using it to create a world that's more just, equitable, and sustainable.
Yeah.
But how do we actually go about building those new systems? What are the practical steps involved?
The book offers a lot of practical advice on this, drawing on examples of successful initiatives from around the world.
I'm curious to hear about those examples. What are some of the most innovative and inspiring models that the book highlights?
One example that really stood out to me was the concept of worker-owned cooperatives.
Oh, I've heard about those. They're basically businesses that are owned and operated by the workers themselves, right?
Exactly. And the book argues that this model has the potential to create a more just and equitable economic system, one where workers have a real stake in the success of their businesses
Okay.
and where profits are shared more equitably.
That's a really appealing concept.
Hmm.
But are there any real-world examples of worker-owned cooperatives that are actually working?
Absolutely. The book highlights the Mondragon Corporation in Spain as a prime example. It's a network of worker-owned cooperatives that employs tens of thousands of people
Wow.
across a wide range of industries.
Wow, that's impressive. It sounds like a really successful model.
Yeah.
Are there any other examples that stand out?
Another interesting example is the concept of community land trusts.
Okay.
These are organizations that hold land in trust for the benefit of the community, ensuring that housing remains affordable and accessible even in the face of rising real estate prices.
That's a great idea,
Mm.
especially in cities where housing costs are skyrocketing. Are there any other examples that the book mentions?
The book also discusses the concept of time banks,
Hmm.
where people exchange skills and services directly without using money.
Hmm.
This can be a really powerful way to build community and to create a more equitable system of exchange, one that values everyone's contributions, regardless of their income or social status.
That's fascinating. It reminds me of those barter systems that people used to use before money became the dominant form of exchange. It's almost like a return to a more community-based way of living.
Exactly. And the book argues that these alternative models have the potential to create a more sustainable and resilient society, one that's less dependent on traditional economic systems
Right.
and more focused on meeting the needs of the community.
So it's about moving beyond the current system and creating something new, something that's more aligned with our values as givers.
Precisely. And the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to get started, whether it's by supporting existing initiatives
Yeah.
or by creating our own.
So it's about taking action, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the book reminds us that we don't have to have all the answers or do everything perfectly. The most important thing is to start somewhere,
Yeah.
to experiment, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep moving forward.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding the Taker's playbook,
Mhm.
challenging the status quo, and building new systems. But what about the personal side of things? How do we thrive as givers in a world that often feels hostile to our values? The book talks about developing a giver mindset, right?
Yes, and it emphasizes that this isn't just about being nice or helpful. It's about cultivating a way of thinking and being in the world that's grounded in generosity, empathy, and a deep commitment to creating positive change.
So it's about giving a core part of who we are,
Yeah,
not just something we do on occasion.
exactly. And the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to cultivate a giver mindset,
Okay.
from practicing gratitude
Yeah.
to focusing on our strengths, to setting boundaries, to protect our energy and well-being.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It's about recognizing that giving isn't just about what we do for others, it's also about how we treat ourselves and how we show up in the world.
absolutely. And the book argues that when we cultivate a giver mindset, we not only benefit others, but we also benefit ourselves.
Right.
We experience greater happiness, fulfillment, and a sense of purpose.
That's a really powerful idea. It's about recognizing that giving isn't a zero-sum game. It's something that expands our capacity for joy and connection.
And the book offers a lot of research and anecdotal evidence to support this claim. It shows that people who engage in acts of generosity and kindness experience a boost in their own well-being, both physically and mentally.
So it's not just a feel-good idea, it's actually backed by science. I love that.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, even with a giver mindset, it can be tough to stay motivated when we're constantly surrounded by messages that tell us to look out for ourselves first. How do we stay true to our values in a world that often feels so selfish and competitive?
That's a great question. And the book offers some really valuable insights on this.
Okay.
It encourages us to find our tribe,
Okay.
to connect with other givers who share our values and who can offer support and encouragement along the way.
So it's about building community, right?
Exactly. And it's about surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us,
Mm-hmm.
who challenge us to be our best selves, and who remind us why this work is so important.
That makes a lot of sense because when we feel connected to a larger purpose, it's easier to stay motivated, even when things get tough.
Absolutely. And the book offers some great advice on how to find those communities, whether it's through online groups, local organizations, or simply reaching out to people who share our interests and passions.
So it's about being proactive and seeking out those connections.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we're not alone in this. There are millions of people around the world who are working to create a more just, equitable, and sustainable world. And when we connect with those people, we tap into a powerful force for change.
That's a really inspiring thought. It's about recognizing that we're part of a larger movement, a movement that's bigger than any one individual. But how do we sustain that momentum over time? I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the initial excitement of a new project or initiative. But how do we keep that energy going, especially when we encounter setbacks or obstacles?
That's where the book's insights on resilience and self-care become really important.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
One of the key messages is that we need to pace ourselves. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
And that means being realistic about our limitations,
Yeah.
setting boundaries to protect our time and energy, and taking breaks when we need them.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about recognizing that burnout is a real risk for anyone who's doing this kind of work. and that taking care of ourselves is essential for sustaining our efforts over the long haul.
Exactly. And the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to do that, from setting realistic goals
Yeah.
to delegating tasks, to practicing mindfulness, to simply taking some time for ourselves to relax and recharge.
So it's about finding that balance between giving and receiving, between pushing ourselves and knowing when to step back.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes that finding that balance is an ongoing process, something that requires constant attention and adjustment.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state of equilibrium. It's about being aware of our needs, our limitations, and our energy levels, and making adjustments as needed.
Precisely. And the book offers a lot of tools and techniques for helping us do that, from tracking our energy levels to setting boundaries to creating a self-care routine that works for us.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this book,
Yeah.
but we're already running out of time for this part of the deep dive.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
Let's pick this up next time, shall we?
Sounds good to me. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about, the importance of building a giver mindset and finding your tribe to sustain momentum. Now let's explore some real-world strategies, from outsmarting the takers on how to actually thrive in this system.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to navigate this world. You mentioned before one of the keys is understanding the taker's playbook.
Right.
Sounds almost like we need to become spies to outsmart them.
And not exactly spies, but it does involve understanding the tactics takers frequently employ to maintain their advantage.
Okay, give me an example. What's one of those tactics?
One common tactic is exploiting loopholes in regulations. Takers often have the resources to find and exploit these loopholes, whether it's in the tax code, environmental regulations, or campaign finance laws.
That's frustrating. But it feels like something that's so much bigger than me. How can I, as an individual, do anything about that?
The book encourages us to become more informed about these loopholes. Sometimes just shining a light on them can be enough to generate public pressure for reform.
So knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about how these loopholes work, the better equipped we are to challenge them.
Exactly. And the book provides some great resources for doing just that. It mentions websites and organizations that track lobbying efforts, campaign contributions, and legal loopholes.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check those out. What are some other tactics that takers use?
Another common tactic is controlling the flow of information.
Okay.
They often have a significant influence over media outlets
Right.
and can shape public opinion by controlling the narrative.
So it's like they're writing the story,
Mm.
and we're just reading it.
Yeah.
How do we break free from that?
The book emphasizes the importance of media literacy, being aware of biases, and seeking out diverse perspectives.
So it's about being critical consumers of information. Don't just accept everything you read or hear at face value.
Exactly. Question the source, look for evidence, and consider who benefits from the information being presented.
It's like being a detective, right?
Yeah.
We need to investigate the information
Yeah.
and piece together the truth.
That's a great way to think about it. And the book provides some helpful tips for doing just that, like identifying logical fallacies, recognizing propaganda techniques, and fact-checking information.
It sounds like it takes a lot of effort to stay informed these days.
It definitely does, but the book argues that it's an essential part of being an effective giver.
Okay, so we've talked about loopholes and misinformation. What are some other tactics that takers use to maintain their advantage?
Another tactic is creating a culture of fear and scarcity.
Okay.
Takers often thrive in environments
Oh.
where people are afraid, anxious, and focused on their own survival.
I've definitely seen that play out in the real world. When people are scared, they're less likely to think critically or to challenge authority.
Exactly. And takers will often exploit that fear to maintain their power and control.
So how do we counteract that?
The book encourages us to cultivate a sense of abundance
Okay.
and to focus on building community and connection. When we feel connected to others, when we feel supported and loved, we're less likely to fall prey to fear and scarcity tactics.
So it's about building those resilient networks that we talked
Right.
about earlier.
Right.
It's about creating those spaces where people feel safe, supported, and empowered to speak their truth.
Precisely. And the book offers some great advice on how to do that, from hosting potlucks and game nights to starting a community garden
Yeah.
to simply checking in on our neighbors and offering a helping hand.
Those are great examples. It's about creating those small moments of connection that can help to build a stronger, more resilient community.
Exactly. And the book argues that those small moments can have a ripple effect, creating a culture of generosity and compassion that can spread throughout the community and beyond.
I love that idea. It's about creating those positive feedback loops where acts of kindness inspire more acts of kindness and where giving becomes the norm, not the exception.
And the book provides a ton of real-world examples of how people are doing just that. From starting random acts of kindness movements to creating pay-it-forward chains to simply smiling at strangers and offering a word of encouragement.
Those are great examples. It's about recognizing that we all have the power to make a difference in the world, even in seemingly small ways.
Absolutely. And the book argues that when we focus on those small acts of kindness and connection, we not only benefit others, but we also benefit ourselves. We experience greater happiness, fulfillment, and a sense of purpose.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding the Taker's playbook and cultivating a sense of abundance and connection. What are some other practical strategies that the book recommends for thriving in this system?
One of the most important is becoming financially savvy. The book argues that financial literacy is essential for givers, not because we're motivated by greed or material wealth, but because it gives us more freedom and flexibility to pursue our passions and to make a positive impact in the world.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If we're constantly struggling to make ends meet, it's harder to focus on giving back to others.
Exactly. And the book provides some great advice on how to achieve financial stability, from budgeting and saving to investing and managing debt.
It's about taking control of our finances so that we can use them as a tool for good.
Precisely. And the book emphasizes that financial savvy isn't just about making money. It's about using our resources wisely, ethically, and in alignment with our values.
So it's about aligning our spending habits with our values, right?
Exactly. And the book provides some helpful tips for doing just that. From supporting ethical businesses, to investing in socially responsible companies, to simply being mindful of our consumption habits and making choices that reflect our commitment to sustainability and social justice.
Those are great examples. It's about recognizing that our money has power and that we can use that power to support the causes that we care about. But what about those of us who aren't exactly rolling in dough? I mean, I'm not exactly a financial whiz,
Yeah.
and I don't have a ton of money to invest. Does the book offer any advice for those of us who are struggling financially?
Absolutely. The book emphasizes that financial savvy isn't just for the wealthy. It provides a lot of practical advice for people who are living paycheck to paycheck, from creating a budget to negotiating with creditors,
Right.
to finding resources for financial assistance.
So it's about empowering people to take control of their finances no matter their income level.
Exactly. And the book reminds us that even small changes can make a big difference.
Like what?
Packing your lunch instead of eating out,
Okay.
brewing your own coffee instead of buying it at a cafe, or simply cutting back on unnecessary expenses.
Those are great examples. It's about being mindful of our spending habits and making small changes that can add up to big savings over time.
Precisely. And the book encourages us to see those savings as an opportunity to invest in ourselves, our communities, and the causes that we care about.
Okay, so we've talked about financial savvy. What are some other practical strategies that the book recommends for thriving in this system?
Another important strategy is becoming an effective advocate.
Okay, so we're talking about speaking up for ourselves,
Yeah,
for our communities, and for the causes that we care about.
exactly. And the book argues that givers are often natural advocates because we're passionate about making a difference in the world.
But advocating can feel intimidating, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not exactly a public speaker,
Right.
and I don't have a lot of experience with political activism.
Mm-hmm.
Does the book offer any advice for those of us who are new to advocating?
Absolutely. The book provides a lot of practical advice on how to become an effective advocate, from identifying your passions
Okay.
to researching the issues, to finding your voice and sharing your story.
So it's about finding those issues that light you up and then learning how to speak about them in a way that's authentic and compelling.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that advocacy doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It can be as simple as having a conversation with a friend,
Okay.
writing a letter to your elected official, or sharing a petition on social media.
Those are great examples. It's about recognizing that we all have the power to make a difference, even in seemingly small ways.
Absolutely. And the book provides a ton of real-world examples of how people are using those small acts of advocacy to create meaningful change.
Like what?
One example that comes to mind is the story of a group of parents
Okay.
who successfully advocated for healthier school lunch options in their district. They started by talking to other parents, then they organized a petition, and eventually they met with the school board and presented their case. They didn't have any special training or experience in advocacy, but they were passionate about the issue, and they were willing to speak up. And in the end, they made a real difference for their children and for the entire community.
That's an inspiring story. It
Yeah.
shows that anyone can be an advocate, even if they don't have a lot of experience or resources.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that the most important thing is to start somewhere, to find your voice, and to use it to speak up for the things that you care about.
So it's about finding your own unique way to make a difference in the world, whether it's through grand gestures or small acts of kindness.
And it's about recognizing that we're all connected, and that our actions, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect and contribute to creating a more just, equitable, and sustainable world.
I love that idea. It's about seeing ourselves as part of a larger web of interconnectedness, where our actions have the power to influence the world around us. But speaking of interconnectedness, we're running out of time for this part of the deep dive.
We are. We still have a lot more to cover, including how to actually create new, more equitable systems.
So let's pick this up next time.
Yep.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Outsmarting the Takers. We were talking about becoming financially savvy and finding your voice as an advocate. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about creating new systems.
Okay.
That sounds kind of big.
It is where things get really interesting. The book argues that we don't have to accept the current systems as they are. We have the power to create something new, something that's more just and equitable and sustainable.
Okay, I love that idea, but it feels a bit daunting. How do we even begin to create new systems? It feels so massive.
Right. The book encourages us to start by shifting our perspective. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of the task, we can focus on the areas where we have influence and where we can make a tangible difference.
So it's about starting small, right? Finding those places where we can experiment with new approaches.
Exactly. And the book provides a ton of inspiring examples of people who are doing just that.
Okay.
For example, it highlights the growing movement for community land trusts
Okay.
as a way to address the housing crisis.
I've heard a bit about community land trusts, but I'm not entirely sure how they work. Can you explain it to someone who's not a real estate expert?
Absolutely. In a nutshell, a community land trust is a nonprofit organization
Okay.
that owns land and leases it out to residents
Okay.
at affordable rates.
Okay.
The idea is to separate the cost of the land from the cost of the housing,
Okay.
which can help to keep housing prices stable and prevent displacement.
That's brilliant. It takes the pressure off of home buyers
Right.
and allows them to focus on building equity in their homes without being priced out of their communities.
Exactly. And the book highlights several successful examples of community land trusts across the country,
Oh, wow.
showing that this model can be adapted to different contexts and communities.
That's really encouraging. It gives me hope that we can actually create more affordable and equitable housing options. What are some other examples of new systems that the book highlights?
Another interesting example is the concept of worker-owned cooperatives.
Oh, yeah, we touched on those earlier. They're businesses that are owned and operated by the workers themselves, right?
Exactly. And the book argues that this model has the potential to create a more democratic and equitable workplace, one where workers have a real say in how the business is run and where profits are shared more fairly.
I can definitely see the appeal of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also curious about the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, running a business is hard work, and it requires a lot of expertise.
Right.
How do worker-owned cooperatives address those challenges?
The book acknowledges that worker-owned cooperatives face unique challenges, but it also highlights several successful examples of co-ops that have overcome those challenges and thrived.
Okay.
One key factor is education and training.
Okay.
Many co-ops provide ongoing training and support to their worker owners
Right.
to help them develop the skills they need to manage and operate the business effectively.
So it's about empowering the workers with the knowledge and resources they need to succeed.
Exactly. And the book also emphasizes the importance of building strong networks of support, both within the co-op itself and with other co-ops in the community.
So it's about creating that sense of solidarity and shared purpose that we talked about earlier.
Precisely. And the book argues that when worker owners feel connected to a larger purpose, and when they have the support they need to succeed, they're more likely to be engaged and committed to the success of the co-op.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating a culture of ownership and accountability where everyone feels invested in the success of the enterprise.
Exactly. And the book highlights several examples of co-ops that have created incredibly innovative and successful businesses, demonstrating that this model can be a powerful engine for economic empowerment and social change.
That's really inspiring. It gives me hope that we can create a more just and equitable economic system, one where workers have more control over their livelihoods and where profits are shared more fairly. What are some other examples of new systems that the book highlights?
Another fascinating example is the concept of time banks.
I'm intrigued by time banks.
Yeah.
Can you explain how they work?
So in a time bank, people exchange services directly,
Yeah.
using time as the unit of currency.
Okay.
So, for example, if I spend an hour helping you with your garden,
Right.
I earn one time credit
Okay.
that I can then use to purchase an hour of someone else's time,
Mm.
whether it's for childcare, home repairs, or even just companionship.
Wow, that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
It seems like it could be a great way to build community
Yeah,
and to foster a sense of reciprocity and mutual support.
exactly. And the book highlights several successful time banks around the world,
Oh, wow.
showing that this model can be adapted to different communities and contexts.
I love the idea of creating a system where everyone's time and skills are valued equally,
Right.
regardless of their income or social status.
Exactly. And the book argues that time banks can be a powerful tool for addressing social isolation,
Mm.
building stronger communities, and creating a more equitable and inclusive society.
That's really inspiring. It makes me wonder if there are any time banks in my area. I'd love to get involved. Are there any other examples of new systems that the book highlights?
The book also discusses the growing movement for open source technology and knowledge sharing
Right.
as a way to democratize access to information and resources.
I've heard about open source software,
Mm,
but I'm not sure I fully understand the implications of applying that concept to other areas of life.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that?
absolutely. The idea behind open source is to make information and resources freely available to everyone, without restrictions or proprietary controls.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of relying on expensive textbooks,
Yeah.
students could access open source educational materials online. Or, instead of relying on patented pharmaceuticals, communities could develop open source medical treatments.
That's a really powerful idea. It could revolutionize the way we learn, heal, and even govern ourselves.
Exactly. And the book argues that open source models have the potential to create a more just and equitable world, one where everyone has access to the information and resources they need to thrive.
I love that vision. It's about breaking down those barriers of exclusivity
Yeah.
and creating a world where knowledge and resources are shared freely and openly.
And the book provides several inspiring examples of people and organizations that are working to make that vision a reality, from open source software developers to open access academic journals to community-based knowledge sharing networks.
That's amazing. It gives me hope that we can create a world where information is truly democratized
Right.
and where everyone has the opportunity to learn and grow and contribute their unique gifts.
And it's not just about access to information.
Yeah.
It's also about creating a culture of collaboration and sharing where we value collective wisdom and where we work together to solve problems and create solutions that benefit everyone.
I love that idea. It's about moving beyond those individualistic competitive models
Right.
and embracing a more collaborative and community-oriented approach to life.
Exactly. And the book argues that this shift in perspective is essential for creating a more sustainable and equitable future. One where we prioritize the well-being of the planet and all its inhabitants
Yeah.
over individual gain.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected,
Yeah.
that our actions have consequences for others, and that we have a responsibility to create a world that works for everyone.
And the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to do just that. From supporting ethical businesses
Okay.
to reducing our environmental impact to simply being more mindful of our consumption habits and making choices that reflect our commitment to a more just and sustainable world.
So it's about aligning our actions with our values,
Yeah.
right? It's about living in a way that reflects our commitment to creating a better world.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes that even small changes can make a big difference.
Like what?
Choosing to walk or bike instead of driving, buying local produce instead of imported goods, reducing our energy consumption at home, or simply being more mindful of our waste and recycling habits.
Those are great examples.
Mhm.
It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future, and that our individual choices, when multiplied by millions,
Yeah,
can have a significant impact.
exactly. And the book encourages us to see those choices not as sacrifices,
Yeah.
but as opportunities
Yeah.
to align our lives with our values and to create a world that we're proud to be a part of.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's about shifting our mindset from scarcity to abundance, from competition to collaboration,
Yeah.
and from self-interest to collective well-being.
And the book argues that this shift in mindset is not only essential for creating a better world, but it's also essential for our own happiness and fulfillment. When we connect with a larger purpose, when we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, we experience a deeper sense of meaning and satisfaction in our lives.
That's a really powerful message. It's about recognizing that giving is not just about helping others. It's also about enriching our own lives and creating a more meaningful and fulfilling existence.
Absolutely. And the book provides a ton of inspiring examples of people who have found that sense of purpose and fulfillment
Yeah.
through their work to create a more just, equitable, and sustainable world.
It's about recognizing that we all have unique gifts and talents to offer, and that when we use those gifts to make a positive impact in the world, we not only benefit others, but we also tap into a deep well of joy and satisfaction within ourselves.
And that's a beautiful thought to end on.
It is. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
that we all have the power to make a difference, and that when we work together, we can create a world that's truly worthy of our love and our commitment.
So to our listener, I hope this deep dive into outsmarting the takers has given you some new insights and inspiration for navigating this complex world.
Remember, it's about understanding the game, finding your tribe, and taking action, even in small ways to create the change you want to see in the world.
And never underestimate the power of your own generosity, your creativity, and your unwavering commitment to making a difference.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another exploration of a topic you're interested in. Until then, keep learning, keep connecting, and keep giving.